This is episode 3 of That Ain't Right. So, this story is about corporate greed, where corporations put the bottom dollar before human health. And you may wonder why this story is of particular interest to you. And I'll say the reason is because of Canadian taxpayers' dollars. You see, when a corporation claims no responsibility, somebody has to pay. Because when human health is involved and people are getting sick, you're paying for it. The corporations have now washed their hands of this, and you are the ones who are having to pay to help return people to a natural state of health, which I gotta say, in the case of mold, sometimes never happens. Some people have such detrimental health effects that they never recover. They are now permanently scarred from their experience. So, I've also created some journalism rules for myself here that I will always include evidence, and I will not say names or businesses unless the story has already been published in the news, in which case they already put the name out there, and I'm just sharing this, aspects of the story, of course, that they never shared. So in those cases, I will share the details of who, when, why, what, where, all that. So I'd like to introduce you to a very big corporation called Corp and what they did to over 50 families. And it ain't right. So I'm sorry to only be able to share just picture clips with you because they didn't actually run the story. Uh, Global News had come into my home. We did a full interview and they chose not to air it. They chose rather instead to just have a picture with words. So I'll just read it to you briefly because simply showing flashes on a screen doesn't really help you. So, Kelowna. A Kelowna family is racing to find a new place to live after learning that their mobile home at the Hiawatha Mobile Home Park is infested with mold. Crystal Short says it's a stressful situation because the mold has had an impact on her family's health and finances. Short says she noticed the mold issue a couple of months ago after a slow leak behind the toilet went undetected for a while. Her oldest daughter was recently diagnosed with Crohn's disease and has been in and out of hospital. Short believes living in the mold has made her health problems worse. Quote, she had headaches, nausea, vomiting all day, says Short. It got to the point she had to go to the hospital due to dehydration. After getting someone in to test the home, the property management company sent Short a letter saying entry into the home should be limited to people wearing respiratory protection. Now she and her daughters either have to stay with friends or at the women's shelter. We only have 2 weeks to stay there, and I'm working on trying to find a rental as fast as possible, says Short. She says it's tough to find affordable housing in Kelowna, but doesn't want to move back into the trailer. Corp Property Management has asked for access to the home so it can remediate the mold situation. Short says the company has offered to let her out of her lease and give her back 3 months' rent, but she wants to take the matter to the residential tenancy branch. So that's all you were told of the situation. Which I gotta say, there was a lot more to that situation. So thankfully at the time, I had a really good boss who taught me some really good lessons in life. And he said take daily notes of everything. Because when you have a record of what has occurred, that's the best that you can hope for. So I'll read to you what happened that was not shared with you. All right, so this is a record of what actually happened. So, titled Mold in number 39 at 3787 Lakeshore Road. January 29th, 2016. Rent is paid for the month of February 2016. Hiawatha Trailer Park Manager, specifically Carrie Fields, is notified of leak in bathroom and wet carpet in children's room. Maintenance, Rob, comes in the same day and repairs leak. Lifts a portion of carpet in children's room to add a blower fan. Moldy boards in bathroom behind toilet base are closed by maintenance without cleaning, drying, or inspection. Tenant asks what is being done about the mold. Mold growth on children's dresser, mold on carpet, mold in bathroom. Maintenance, Rob, laughs at tenant and claims there is no mold and tenant only wants new carpet. When dryer fan is removed by maintenance staff Rob, tenant inquires again about mold and is once again laughed at and told there is no mold. The tenant only wants new carpets. February 4th, 2016, tenant's child is flown to Children's Hospital in Vancouver to receive Humira injection, which lowers the immune system, and she's flown home the same day. February 5th, 2016, tenant's child wakes violently ill. Residence is extremely musty. Tenant opens baseboard behind toilet to find the area to be extremely damp with black and white fluffy mold growing. Exterior air is filtering into baseboard from hole in floor where bathroom pipes exit the interior of the home, blowing the mold spores into the bathroom. Area was disturbed despite being boarded up by maintenance. Phone call is made to Hiawatha Trailer Park manager, specifically Carrie Fields. Tenant notifies Hiawatha Trailer Park manager that while efforts are being made on the part of the tenant to remove a bed on the outside of the premises, which had been discarded from mold in another bedroom, an inquiry was made as to what was being done about the mold inside the trailer. Tenant is told there is no mold. Hiawatha Trailer Park manager is notified again that there is a dangerously ill child with a lowered immune system in the household in a compromised state, and tenant requests to please send pictures before being dismissed that there is no mold. Tenant is notified there is no cell phone number to send pictures. Tenant inquires if there is an email address available for the property manager to view images, despite the fact that she works on the premises and could easily have viewed the mold damage herself. An email address is provided and images are sent of the mold in the children's room and also in the bathroom. Tenant is notified the property manager would be on site within a half hour. Property manager Carrie Fields arrives at residence with maintenance staff Archie. After a brief look at the mold damage, the property manager and maintenance staff offers to replace the carpet in the children's room. The property manager suggests removing the moldy boards in the bathroom, while the maintenance staff suggests they spray paint the area and wood removal is unnecessary. While viewing the mold, the property manager and maintenance staff got a first-hand look at how sick the tenant's child was, as the child needed to use the bathroom during the course of the visit. The property manager joked that they would have to wait around for a few moments before they could close the damp baseboard again because the bathroom was in use. Property manager tries giving her personal opinion on mold, that as long as it is not disturbed, it is not harmful. Also, that West Corp finds asbestos in many of their other buildings, and mold, like asbestos, is not harmful if not disturbed. Tenant notifies property manager just how serious the child's health problems are, that a hospital trip to emergency seemed imminent that day, and that if current medications, Humira, didn't show signs of improvement, the child would be needing to have her colon removed. A brochure entitled The Cutting Edge, A Guide to Crohn's, was shown to property manager to demonstrate the severity of the situation. She was informed again that the child had just endured a 12-day hospital stay at Vancouver Children's Hospital, and there was a team of 5 doctors involved in her care trying to determine what was wrong. The tenant said the home is unsafe for the children. In brackets, once a patient with Crohn's has a portion of colon removed, the surgery needs to be repeated again in 5 years. So this is a very severe step we are trying to avoid at all cost. Maintenance staff Archie returns and removes moldy boards. He exits residence and is reluctant to provide tenant with a board as evidence and does not agree that the boards need testing. With rubber gloves, he wipes down the remaining surface mold from behind the toilet. He notifies tenant he will return with a can of spray paint. Tenant refuses access to the residence as spray painting over a dampened area only hides the problem. And with a sick child, the mold needs to be properly tested to verify if this is aggravating health problems and for the household or not. Tenant keeps one moldy board for actual testing. Tenant is contacted by telephone by Carrie Fields, property manager, and told that if tenant insists on an inspection, they would have their personal restoration contractors have a look February 9th, 2016, when the long weekend had ended. She also made a point that the tenant chose not to let maintenance fix the problem with spray paint, and it is therefore the tenant's responsibility that it was not yet fixed and would remain as such until an appointment could be made. Health of tenant's child continues to deteriorate, leading to hospital admittance. Tenant stays at hospital with child. Other children are cared for by friends with safe homes. February 6th, 2016. Tenant finds lodging at women's shelter for self and children. Given approximately a 2-week stay with 4 beds and food to meet 2 of the children's special dietary concerns. Tenant receives no contact from Hiawatha Trailer Park. February 7th, 2016. Tenant's concerned friend notifies the media of situation, and they perform an interview and film the mold in the residence. A phone call is made from Global BC to Hiawatha Trailer Park inquiring about the mold in the trailers. Hiawatha has no comment. West Corp management in Edmonton contacts tenant and offers accommodation in a hotel for tenant and 3 dependents. Tenant notifies manager of current situation, which they claimed to be unaware of, and sends email with images of mold in trailer and sick child. Tenant's concern is that hotels do not typically have 4 beds available, so 2 adjoining rooms would be necessary, and that this is typically a problem when there is only 1 adult in the room to oversee 3 children in 2 adjoined rooms. Also, that the tenant was at the hospital with a sick child and trying to coordinate childcare for the other 2 children. There was no time available to make inquiries regarding hotels in Kelowna. Tenant is notified by West Corp management in Edmonton that she would personally find accommodations and they would do anything to help, even providing a personal cellular phone number to call 24/7 if we needed anything. Tenant is notified that accommodations have been arranged at the Access Inn. After this accommodation offer had been made, West Corp changed their story with Global BC from no comment to "we did everything in our power to fix the problem and are delayed by the long weekend." They claimed they did not know my child was sick or that it was unsafe for us to stay in the home. Also, that they had been kind enough to offer us accommodations. So the tenant checks out of women's shelter and arrives at Access Inn to discover West Corp had only reserved 1 small room with 2 beds, despite personal needs that had been previously discussed and agreed upon. West Corp management in Edmonton is contacted again and asked why there wasn't enough beds reserved to fit the family unit as stated was necessary. Tenant is informed that she did not book the room and therefore did not realize it was too small. When questioned why she did not personally book the room as promised, tenant is notified the hotel would not take credit cards over the phone. The reservation had to be made in person, so she had passed the task along to another employee. The reservation was for a single room. Attached evidence. The reservation was made in the name of Danielle, the local property manager for Hiawatha Trailer Park, that would not take the mold complaint seriously in the first place and is now personally involved in trying to cover it up. Access In notified tenant that they do not accept business or corporate cards over the phone, and that the person had been booked with a personal credit card, which is why. Oh, wait, sorry. Hang on, let me back up. Access In notified tenant that they do accept business or corporate cards over the phone, and that the room had been booked with a personal credit card, which is why they required someone to come in person. Why a major corporation would choose to pay a business expense of this sort on an individual employee's credit card is beyond me. West Corp management in Edmonton says to get whatever size room is required to house a tenant's family, and they will pay for it. Access In is notified, and they are able to find 2 adjoining rooms with 4 beds total. 0 couch beds available in rooms. They phone credit card holder Danielle, local Hiawatha property manager, to get permission to charge 2 rooms to the bill because it had been approved by head office. Danielle says she will call back after consulting with head office. Danielle calls back and approves the rooms, but only for 1 night. Tenant is notified they need to be out the following morning by 11, and that Hiawatha staff would drive to the hotel to visit the tenant to talk further in person. In the morning, it says 4 a.m. Access In has a bomb threat, and tenant and children have to vacate the hotel. I'll include a picture for that. It was a crazy night. February 8th, 2016, tenant is homeless and spends day and night at hospital, while other 2 children are split between safe homes again for the night. February 9th, 2016, Hiawatha Trailer Park manager Carrie Fields notifies tenant that Strutter's Restoration Services will be on site for an inspection that morning. Permission is granted for access. Ashley Green, Strutter's Restoration Services project manager, inspects bathroom and bedroom. The bathroom floor and surrounding wood is confirmed to be damp with active growing mold. It is recommended to the Hiawatha maintenance staff that the linoleum be tested for asbestos based on the age of the trailer. The bedroom floor is dry, but it is confirmed to be mold growing on the children's dresser, although he does suggest it could possibly be cleaned off the dresser surface. He does not do any sampling or testing of the mold or the air quality at that time in the trailer. A phone message is received from Hiawatha management, Carrie Fields, saying that the inspector had suggested they remove the children's dresser out of the home as soon as possible, and they want tenant to return and empty contents from dresser, and they would replace the dresser as soon as possible. At this point, tenant's child is released from hospital, and tenant is unable to return to residence. A new property manager from Hiawatha Trailer Park calls tenant and arranges to bag clothing from children's dresser. Permission is granted by tenant. Air quality test for mold and spores still has not occurred at this time. The management company is trying to remove as much of the mold as possible before testing can take place to downplay severity of mold situation. New property manager offers 1 night stay in the Access Inn again for 1 room with 2 beds. Tenant informs property manager that this is not enough space for a family of 4 to reside in while major renovations are taking place. Manager is also notified by tenant that the tenant does not wish to return to the trailer on the basis of poor management that covered up a mold problem to begin with and is still in the process of doing, and also from the lowered immune system of the oldest child. A home is required that is contaminant free, and the trailer park is unable to provide such a home for the tenant's household. February 10th. Tenant is on site at the residence packing clothes and various belongings. Closets not involved in mold inspection had been opened and left opened since tenant's last visit to property. Hiawatha staff had snooped through the home, opening personal spaces. Hiawatha maintenance staff Archie arrives with mold inspector without any notification to tenant. Air quality samples are taken along with mold scrapings from bathroom, children's room, and tenant's room. Tenant is not given a business card, but overhears testing could return as soon as the next day. Inspector did seem very thorough as he climbed under the trailer with a full hazmat suit. Hiawatha maintenance staff Archie tells mold inspector he feels problems are tenant's fault, as tenant cleans skulls, and he felt industrial ventilation was a necessity for such a hobby. He also tells mold inspector that tenant intentionally cut the floor in the bathroom. All right, take a little break from reading here and do some explaining. So, yeah, at the end there, maybe some of you guys are surprised. Yes, I clean skulls. I used to be a taxidermist. I did all the taxidermy work for the Kelowna museums. I did work for the conservation officers. I pretty much tried to do educational work only because I was not in a position to be a full-blown and commercial taxidermist. I was not. I was a hobbyist who was trying to do good deeds. And then we used the money from that to help pay for our nonprofit society, to build you guys an online educational resource. So that's what that was. And as part of living at the trailer park, I wasn't just a tenant. In our previous video, we'd explained how my family had adopted the creek around the trailer park. So we were always out volunteering, cleaning up, picking up garbage. We'd received a thank you letter and some flowers from the trailer park in the past. I also worked as a contractor for the trailer park. So I was a wildlife control officer. So I got to catch the raccoons because there was a bit of a raccoon problem down at the trailer park, and it was very dangerous for people that had small kids that would want to play outside. So I'll add a little clip of that for you so you'll see I ain't making it up. But I was more than just a tenant there, more than just a single woman in a trailer that could easily move out. We had an entire household that was living there. And when they had come and went through all of the cupboards when I wasn't home, there were items that were missing. There was jewelry that got stolen. There were some of my tanning supplies that had been stolen. It is my personal belief that they were trying to figure out how to pin this on me. Like, as the maintenance staff had said, we think this is her fault. Absolutely, they were trying to pin it on me. But tanning hides does not equate to having mold. I'm sorry, but that is not the same thing. So I'm going to pull up some more evidence for you here. We can keep going with this story, but the unfortunate thing is when I did call the RCMP and say, hey, some items got stolen from my trailer, they're missing. My landlord came in when I wasn't here and they took things. They didn't even come and look. It was honestly really heartbreaking when you call the people that you're supposed to call when things go wrong and they don't even come and look. They say, that's a civil suit, wasn't enough money worth of things taken. That ain't right. So anyways, let's keep going with the story here, because as it turns out, we weren't the only trailer in the trailer park that had mold. I believe upcoming news stories say it was more than 51 residents in the trailer park that ended up having mold. So my family and I ended up living at a women's shelter for a while, which is a little bit like prison. If you've never stayed at a women's shelter, you wouldn't know this, but they have rules. Like, you're not allowed to go out at night. They want you in at a certain hour, doors locked, and you can't go out. They figure if you had another place to stay, you should be there. And so, yeah, we were pretty much in prison for quite some time. And we did end up finding a rental in Lumbee, and we got helped by the John Howard Society, I believe it's called. They helped us come up with the first few months' rent so that we could actually afford to live. So we were extremely grateful for our community to step up and help us in such a way, but none of this was on the news. I continually kept emailing Global and giving them updates on what was happening, and they told me they weren't going to rerun the story, that they had no intention to, and that was that. So we were supposed to get paid out for a lot of the things that either couldn't be cleaned by strutters and moved. In the end, I kept all my receipts. I still have everything. But in the end, they sent a form that said, sign this. It says, in order to get your check, you and your children can never sue West Corp. And I was not about to sign my children's rights away to be able to sue them, because that ain't right. So we'll keep going with the story here on what happened with the rest of the families. All right, so to be fair here, I am going to read you what West Corp Property Management deemed to be their version of events. They say, Dear Crystal, on the morning of Friday, January 29th, you reported a leak in your trailer. The leak in the bathroom was repaired the same morning by staff. At that time, staff pulled back the carpet and put in an air dryer to dry out the wet wood and carpeting in the bedroom adjacent to the bathroom. Staff returned the following Monday, February 1st, once the floor and carpet were dry, and reinstalled the wall paneling. Later in the week, you found what you suspected was mold and advised the office staff. Staff came to your residence and notified the appearance of some darker stains on the wood behind the pipe chase that you had opened up. This wood was immediately cut away and replaced. You were told the same day that a restoration company would be contacted to conduct further inspection. That weekend, you decided you didn't feel it was safe for you and your children to remain in the trailer. You were put up in a room at the Accent Inn at West Corp's expense and advised you could stay there until the trailer was repaired. However, you chose to leave after 2 nights, when your request for 2 adjoining rooms was denied. You chose at that time to move yourself and your children into a women's shelter. February 9th, 2016, we contacted Strutter's Restoration to look at your trailer and advise about the issues you brought to our attention. Strutters determined that the source of the issues was caused by water leakage over a long period of time. It was also noted at that time that you had cut and peeled back some of the linoleum behind the toilet to expose the subfloor. As per your request, West Corp has contracted an air quality testing company to test for mold in your unit number 39. Apex EHS Services Incorporated was hired to conduct this testing. An inspection of the entire unit and samples were collected on Wednesday, February 10th, 2016. The total cost for the testing is $1,950 plus GST. We expect to have results back by the end of Thursday, February 11th, 2016, and we will determine a course of action following that report. Sincerely, West Corp Property Management Incorporated, Ron Forms, Property Manager, Kelowna. So, if you've noticed here, a few of the details that they say are not right. And also, who's Ron? This is new. I had dealt with so many different names from this corporation that it really, really goes to show this is like a multi-headed beast. You are not dealing with one person. You are dealing with an entire corporation that has many, many people working for it. Staying at the women's shelter was not fun. I mean, we are grateful, so grateful, but it wasn't fun. We were surrounded by a lot of women in really hard situations. Like, I wasn't allowed to take pictures there. I wasn't allowed to share things from there, but one day maybe I'll make a video on what it's actually like staying at a women's shelter, because that was actually the second time in my life I had to do that. Anyways, let's focus up on this. The total cost for testing is $1,950 plus GST. So let's just ignore the GST for a minute. And considering there were 51 trailers in that trailer park that had mold, if they had have tested every trailer to know that these are actually safe for people to live in, the total cost before GST would have been $99,450. So, I mean, add some GST and you're over $100,000 there just to test the trailers to make sure that they were safe. So let's switch over to a little clip here where apparently months after my situation had occurred, Global News decided to come back and run another story. So let's run that reel for you.
Good evening. They knew they'd have to move out eventually, but dozens of Kelowna residents must now find new affordable housing sooner than they expected. Their trailer park was purchased by a developer, but it's a potential health threat that's forcing an early move out for about 50 families. Angela Jung reports.
We're in the kids' bedroom.
It's a sight no parent wants to see. Mold in their children's bedroom.
And you can see that there's obviously huge moisture buildup. And in fact, so bad that even the tape couldn't, this is supposed to be a protective cover, but the moisture prevents it from staying stuck.
And in the living room. This wet ceiling creating an environment where more mold could grow.
Wet usually leads to mold.
Michael Jensen has been living in this trailer at Hiawatha Mobile Home Park for the last 2 years. He isn't the only resident of the park who's spoken to us about mold problems. Last February, we interviewed this single mother.
And I pulled back and saw that there was mold and called them and said, no, you really need to come in and deal with this.
The park was purchased by Corp Property Management back in 2007 with plans to develop the land. This past spring, the company brought in inspectors who confirmed more than half the trailers in the park have problems.
51 units have been identified with either mold or a susceptibility for mold because there's already elevated moisture content.
This green tarp was put on the Jensen's home as a temporary fix, but they and other families are slowly being sent packing.
We are waiting for their lease to end, and then we are not going to extend another lease to them. We're just going to decommission the unit after that.
Corp says 2 units had dangerous levels of mold, so those residents were assisted to move out right away. But it says residents of the other units shouldn't be concerned about their health.
Oh no, it's stuck. It's stuck.
But Michelle Simpson doesn't buy it. With mold on the outside of her trailer and in neighboring homes, she believes that's why her young son is consistently sick.
He gets coughing, he gets vomiting, it's just horrible. He gets a fever, and my roommate seems to think that it is due to mold.
Simpson's lease ends in September, but despite her health concerns, she says she has nowhere to go.
So I can't really afford a place in Kelowna on my own, right? So it sucks. It's going to be hard.
And she's not alone trying to find rare affordable housing. Corp has warned all Hiawatha residents it won't be renting out any more trailers past this winter. Angela Jung, Global News, Kelowna.
So, according to Gail Temple, another Corp employee, there's no mold problems in the other trailers. I mean, yes, they have mold, but they're not of health concern to the people that live there. They would never have paid over $100,000 to test all of these units. They merely decided not to extend their leases. So the rest of the residents that lived in the mold with their health declining were allowed to continue to pay rent until the lease was up. So really, guys, if there's anything I can point out, a corporation is not a human. A corporation is an entity that does not have human anything to it. There is no humanity to a corporation. Despite how many people you might have to deal with dealing with a corporation, they're not people. They're trying to protect a corporation. They're putting money first before human health. So there are over 50 families in our world right now who are struggling with health problems that you as a Canadian taxpayer are paying for because people in trailer parks, this is not the echelon of society. These people, they need help. And they're getting help because the government does offer help to people who need it. But when a corporation is responsible for the decline of their health, they need to be held responsible. Because women's shelters are there to protect against abusive relationships, not abusive corporations. In our personal story, my daughter, who was hospitalized, she's now 20. She did have to finally go in and have that surgery and have her colon removed. She's 20, having to live with a colostomy bag, and that's not cool. Because every single one of these employees of West Corp that you've heard from, every board member that sits around discussing how can they save money, they're doing just fine. And that ain't right. Thank you for listening. Let's try to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future, because there are far, far too many situations where people who are depending on a place to provide a home, a safe home, they don't get to have a safe home because there is far too big of a corporation protecting their own interests, and they are not looking out for the interests of humans. So please, everyone, put your brother and sisters right where they need to be, beside you. Stand together and help one another. Thank you.
We are waiting for their lease to end, and then we are not going to extend another lease to them. We're just going to decommission the unit after that.
West Corp says 2 units had dangerous levels of mold, so those residents were assisted to move out right away. But it says residents of the other units shouldn't be concerned about their health.
Oh no.